Sherlock Holmes, the famous fictional detective from the imagination of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. This consulting detective has stayed famous since its inception in the late 1800s. Holmes' inspiration can be attributed to the real-life professor Joseph Bell, a surgeon at the Royal Infirmary of Edinburgh. Conan Doyle met him in 1877 and worked for him as a clerk. Sherlock Holmes has been represented in many different forms and in many different adaptations, but has he ever been represented in a fantasy D&D game? Not that we're aware of, so we're going to give it a shot and see how it turns out. Alright, little disclaimer here, although it should be obvious from this build, that we are just trying to get this as close to the character as possible within the confines of BG3. This is not like a max build or anything. It'll be functional, but not great, so just keep that in mind. Starting off for race, we of course choose human. Class, we're going to start as Bard. To starting cantrips, we will keep Vicious Mockery, and we will add on Minor Illusion. I think these are kind of the closest we're going to get within the options here. Vicious Mockery, I think, is fitting because of the abrasiveness of Sherlock Holmes's character, and then Minor Illusion because he was really good at getting himself out of sticky situations. For spells, we're going to choose functional ones here. We're going to go with Disguise Self. I think that's pretty self-explanatory, as well as Long Strider. And then Sleep, we're going to just use it as a placeholder. You can keep it if you want to, but in this case, we're using it as a placeholder. And then you can either do Animal Friendship or Speak with Animals. Now, they're both slightly on theme. I'm going to go with Speak with Animals because it is more functional than the other one, but Sherlock Holmes had a bit of an affinity for dogs, so we could really argue that either one is at least somewhat relevant to the character. Obviously, Animal Friendship being a little bit closer because he couldn't actually speak to any of the animals, but he was known to understand dogs pretty well, so I think it's okay to go with Speak with Animals here. Starting instrument, well, violin, because that's actually what his character played, so that's nice and easy. Background, I believe the closest one available to us is Sage, plus it unlocks skill proficiencies in Arcana and History, which is good for the character, so we're going to go with that. And then for the ability scores, we got to change this up a bit here. We're going to bring Charisma all the way down, move that +2 out of there, because again, abrasive, cold, very blunt and to the fact, not very charismatic, so we're going to put that all the way down. Strength, we're going to bring up to 10. This is one I debated on for a bit, if it should be 8 or 10. And after doing a little more reading, I determined that he really isn't that weak. He's not like a strong man or anything, but he was very active, he was in shape, he participated in sports, so I think average strength is appropriate for him. Dexterity, we're going to bump that up to a 16, con to a 14, intelligence up to a 16, and wisdom we're going to keep at 10. Now this spread doesn't really make sense from the perspective of playing a bard. Obviously charisma is where you want to dump most of your points there, but again, we're trying to stay true to character. Going to skill proficiencies, you get Arcana and History from the background already. This one is from your racial background, but we're not going to use Persuasion. We're going to use Investigation instead. We want to get access to that early on. Very appropriate for the character. And then for the 3 that we get Expertise in, let me just get rid of those there. We're going to do Sleight of Hand, Stealth, and Insight. Now you may be wondering, why am I putting it under Sleight of Hand and Stealth this early on? The reason I'm doing that is we are going to be using those skills in this build, and it's a little bit easier for me to grab them right now early on because the hireling that I need to use to show you the rest of the build automatically has Sleight of Hand and Stealth from her background, so I'm just making it a little bit easier for the transition from this to the rest of the build. Alright, that's our skills. Let's go on to appearance. Okay, appearance is going to be pretty easy here. We're going to set identity to male, body type 2. Voice, I mean, is really up to you, but I found that voice 5 I thought sounded the closest. And then for face, we are going to go with head 4, which is this one right here. Skin color is going to be neutral tone 2, this one here, so a bit on the pale side, but not the palest option. We're going to skip over scarring, maturity, freckles, etc. However, if you wanted to play as Sherlock Holmes in the later parts of his life, you could go into the maturity slider and tick that up a bit. The books cover him from approximately ages 26 through 60. We're going to skip over body art and go to eyes. We know from descriptions in the books that he had gray eyes. We're going to go with gray one here. Next, we're going to go into makeup. And this is not necessary, of course. I just think it brings a little bit more to the character. If you use makeup 5, you keep the colors black, and you just put that opacity right around 38% or so. You can bring it up a little bit more if you want, but I feel like 38% is a good look. It just gives a bit of a shadowed and haunted look to him. Then we go to hair. The one I found that I thought looked the closest to the illustrations, at least, is called Windblown. This one right here. It's trimmed, it's neat, it's in alignment with most of the illustrations. And as far as hair color goes, even though he is often portrayed to have brown hair, in the books he actually had black hair, so we're going with black neutral. However, to make it look a little bit fuller and nicer, we're going to go into highlights. We're going to select brown 3, so this dark brown here, and we're going to turn it up to just about 30-ish%. That just gives a little more body to it. In regards to facial hair, most of the illustrations of him do not include any facial hair, so I'm going to skip that for my build. However, there are obviously adaptations of him with facial hair, so if you would like to do that, go for it. And that'll do it for appearance. We are now going to go on to the build. Okay, just a reminder that we are using a hireling here who has a different background from the build, so some of the skills are going to look a little bit different. I'll try to put some reminders in here so that people don't get confused. Okay, so level 2 Bard. We're going to choose a spell here. Now, unfortunately, where we really get into the valuable stuff is level 2 spells, but we do have to choose a level 1 spell here. So, as a nod to the inspiration of Sherlock Holmes, which is Dr. Joseph Bell, we are going to do Healing Word. At level 3 Bard, we've got a couple things to do here. We need to choose our subclass, we need to do some skills, and we need to do a spell. So we're going to go with College of Lore. Out of the options available, that makes the most sense. Just as a reminder, we've got College of Lore, College of Valor, College of Swords. We know that Sherlock did some fencing, but out of all of the options here, College of Lore definitely makes the most sense for his character, so we're going to stick with that. Let's go back here and do our skills now. So we've got 3 skills proficiencies and 2 expertise. Firstly, with skill proficiencies, we're going to do religion, medicine, and perception. Sherlock Holmes was a very educated, learned man. He had to get into religion, arcana, stuff like that to really understand the investigations that he was doing. Medicine, even though Sherlock Holmes was not a doctor, he was inspired. His character was inspired by a doctor, and that definitely did play into some of the knowledge and experience that Sherlock Holmes had. So, not a doctor, but definitely could recognize symptoms, could diagnose certain things. It was important to his investigations. And then perception, I don't think I need to explain that one. For expertise, these 2 are the skills I think are the most critical to this build, and that would be investigation and insight. I think those 2 are more important than anything else you're going to choose. So I definitely recommend getting expertise in those 2, and I think it's for pretty obvious reasons. All right, now we're on to spells, and we have unlocked level 2 spells, which means we have a couple things that are very relevant to this build, but the one I think that fits the most is Detect Thoughts. When we think about Sherlock Holmes' character, we think of like almost a human lie detector of sorts, and I feel like Detect Thoughts is just the perfect thing for his character. At level 4, it is time to choose another cantrip, another spell, and our feat. So for the cantrip, there's not really anything that fitting here. I mean, you could take Mage Hand if you wanted to kind of push the limitations of the build and say, well, you know, he was really good at like lock picking, and he was very careful when he interacted with things because he was so diligent and observant. So it's kind of a stretch, but you could do it. I would personally choose light. It's just functional. Doesn't even really seem like magic. You just have a source of light, and he's human, so he doesn't have dark vision. For spells, again, we've got access to those level 2 spells, which makes it a lot more relevant. I would recommend Knock here. He was a bit of a lock pickist, so Knock does make sense for the character. And then for the first feat, I would recommend starting with Skilled. And I know, wow, there's a lot of skills going on here, but Sherlock Holmes was a very skilled character, and there's a lot of skills here that make sense for his build. So with that in mind, let's clear these out. And here, we're going to round things out by choosing, I'm going to choose nature, survival, and animal handling. Now you may be wondering here, why am I not choosing Arcana? This is where things get confusing. Arcana is one of the skill proficiencies from the background Sage, which is what we chose when we were first building the character in the new character screen. So technically, this is already proficient. We're just not seeing it here because of this hireling's background. So I hope that clears things up. Nature and survival, I think, are very appropriate for the character. Animal handling is a little bit of a stretch, but again, he did seem to have an affinity with dogs. And I mean, it says right there, pet all of the dogs. So I don't feel like we need to put proficiency in any of the other options here at this time. Now, when we get to level 5, this is when it's time to branch into the multi-classing. We are going to go into Rogue now. And when we swap into Rogue, the only thing that we need to do is go into abilities and do a little bit of customization here in the skills area. Acrobatics, don't need it. So what we're going to do here for skills with proficiencies, the last one we're going to grab is Deception. Now, to be clear, Sherlock Holmes himself was not a deceiver. He was very honest to a fault, actually, very blunt with people. So the reason I'm choosing Deception is not because he likes to deceive, but because he is so good at seeing deception in others. Now for expertise, we already at this point have expertise in investigation and insight, which I feel are the most important, but the next two I feel are the most relevant to the character would be perception and medicine. So we're going to put the 2 expertise points there. Confirm. That's all we need to do for level 5. Level 6, nothing we have to do here. We're just unlocking those handy bonus actions of hide, dash, and disengage. Level 3, trying to choose the subclass. Out of the 3 available here, Thief obviously makes the most sense. Arcane's Trickster, we don't want to unlock more magic than we have to in this build because he's not a magic user. An assassin, well, he's definitely not an assassin. So even though he's not technically a thief, this one makes the most sense. It also unlocks an additional bonus action, which is really handy, and mastering the art of falling, which would probably be pretty handy as well if you're someone who's constantly investigating murders. So I think Thief is the best choice here. At level 8, it's time to choose our next feat, and I think this one is a real easy choice. I would just go straight for Alert. +5 bonus to initiative, can't be surprised. Since Sherlock Holmes is such an aware person, he's very perceptive. What are the chances that he would be getting caught off guard? And he would probably be the one to act first in a fight. At level 9, nothing you need to do. You're just unlocking that handy, uncanny dodge, which also seems appropriate for the character. Level 10, nothing really going on here. You could change a skill if you want to, but that's not what we're going to do for the build. Level 11, again, nothing you have to do here, but you are unlocking evasion, which is also very handy. And then at the final level of level 12, all you have to do is choose an additional feat. Now, I'm going to say that this is a bit of dealer's choice what you want to do here. What I'm going to do for the build is ability improvement. Now, what would make more sense in terms of functionality would be to put a +2 under dexterity here. Would probably recommend that you do that. However, to stay more true to the character, I am going to put the +2 under intelligence because, again, this is the core of Sherlock Holmes as a character. He is dexterous, he does have a decent constitution, and he's okay with strength, but his intelligence is his true power. So I'm going to put the +2 under intelligence. Here's a couple bonus items for you. Holmes was known to dabble in drug use, so use alchemy frequently and get those speed potions. Also, since Holmes studied fencing, your weapon of choice will be the rapier. There is only one legendary rapier in Baldur's Gate 3, the Duelist's Prerogative. Not only is this the best rapier in the game, but it's also the best suited for this character build. You can get this weapon in Act 3 by completing the Save Von request. That's it for today's build. Leave us a like, a comment, tell us what other kinds of fun builds you want to see in the future. And if you haven't already, please consider subscribing. We're on our way to 600 subs. Thanks for watching.